Lohan entered the game to pay off his debts. He was reborn as a mythical tier slime, but in this jungle, mythical means nothing. Last time he devoured his first slime and tasted power for the first time. Now the real hunt begins. Lohan's body needed a total of 8 biomass to increase its size by 30% and reinforce the exoskeleton around his body. His diameter, which was previously 13 centimeters, has now grown to 16 centimeters. Unfortunately, this skill did not make him grow exponentially. It only gave him a 30% growth based on his base size. If he found another way to get bigger, this skill would also increase along with it. But if his original size remained at only 10 centimeters, each level of mass expansion would only increase his size by 3 centimeters. But Lohan would complain 3 centimeters was nothing for his human body, but for a small slime 3 centimeters more in diameter than its opponent was, the same as 46% more volume, an overwhelming advantage. It is worth noting that the slime he killed was even bigger than his current size. If it weren't for his strategy exoskeleton, greater speed and better body control, Lohan would be at a great disadvantage against that slime. And that was no surprise, since it had been several days since Lohan's group of slimes was born. It was possible that the slime he devoured had already devoured several other slimes before proving that it was an elite slime. Unfortunately for him, an elite slime was still just a silly slime. And luckily for Lohan, after an hour, he spotted another slime. His body had already absorbed enough biomass to replenish what he had lost while growing and reinforcing his exoskeleton, so he was ready for another fight. Suddenly his instinctive perception picked up movement ahead among a relatively large bush. Small vibrations occurred sporadically, causing the bush to vibrate. Stopping, Lohan tried his best to camouflage himself and observe. A few minutes later, in front of him was a slime the size of himself, that is smaller than the previous slime he had killed. This could only mean one thing, that slime's strong point was some other skill. Observing that other slime, Lohan realized that despite being small, the speed at which that slime devoured the surrounding bushes was very fast. Maybe it has an efficient level 6 digestion, like mine, or even level 7. Its speed is much faster than the previous slime, but still slower than mine. The resistance of its skin membrane is fragile. In general, the risk of this confrontation is low. Just as a guarantee, even though he saw that the risk of facing this slime was low, Lohan still paid 262 biomass to evolve another skill. Hemolymphatic tissue LV1, LV2. During combat or under active damage, the conversion of absorbed matter into vital energy is accelerated by 40%. Increasing the already large 20% increase by another 20%, for a price as low as 262 bio, was a great investment for him, now that he was going into combat. I should have bought this upgrade when I went to deal with the ants, but I already had so much to invest my biomass in, that I didn't find any opportunities. Fortunately, the absorption of other living organisms was so lucrative that Lohan could finally focus on buying more upgrades like this. The slime in front of him was rolling around carefree, while absorbing the environment, showing no signs of alertness, probably having no detection ability, which was great for Lohan. Just a few minutes, the slime got close enough to him, and Lohan went on the attack. The sudden movement startled the little creature, but instead of trying to turn and run away, it also began rolling toward Lohan, confident that it could win this battle. What's going on? Where does this confidence come from? Seeing the fearless way that slime was acting made Lohan worried, but he also had confidence, so in a few seconds the impact came. Splash! The two slimes collided, and the first to suffer from the impact was the small slime whose jelly body spread and slowly disintegrated upon contact with Lohan's hard membrane. But unlike the almost liquid body, he expected to find what Lohan found was a dense body with the hardest and most resistant jelly he had ever seen. The impact of Lohan's thick membrane with the body of that slime only spread a small part of his opponent's body around, but that did not deter the creature. With surprising bravery, the other slime did its best to spread its jelly around Lohan, trying to corrode his hard shell. Lohan's body was as liquid as any other newborn slime, as he had no density enhancement skills, so he knew that if his exoskeleton was corroded, he would be in serious danger. Bloody and brutal battle was taking place. In Lohan's view, the two were engaging and trying their best to cannibalize each other, devouring each other's flesh and using it as fuel to become stronger and devour even more of their opponent. To another spectator, it just looked like those two slimes were hugging and rubbing against each other, while squishy sounds occurred between them. Fortunately for Lohan, with his opponent, S attack hemolymphatic tissue, LV2, activated, and his attack power increased by 40%. That extra 40% attack power was the key to accelerating Lohan's digestion, allowing him to consume the other slime's body as easily as he would a slime with normal density, while his opponent struggled to break through Lohan's exoskeleton. Lohan was quickly consuming his jelly. Within a minute, Lohan's membrane began to show small holes, exposing the almost liquid jelly inside him. From that point on, if his opponent had enough digestive power, it would only be a matter of seconds before he reached Lohan's core. But Lohan didn't just stand by and let his opponent do that. With structural stability, LV2 Lohan extended part of his jelly forward through the hole in his exoskeleton, like a sharp spear, penetrating 2 centimeters deeper into the opponent's slime and finally touching its core. The slime thought victory was assured, imagining that it would be able to consume Lohan's soft and fragile interior. But when it felt this sudden attack penetrating its own body, an unprecedented sense of crisis arose. As if something had cracked mentally, the slime tried to attack and flee at the same time, desperate to survive. But with Lohan's superior speed, it couldn't get away. In a few seconds, Lohan took control of his opponent's core, and the jelly froze for a second, then liquefied, spilling onto the floor. Looking at this nutritious serum in front of him, Lohan smiled mentally and began to devour everything while a notification appeared in front of him. Organism absorbed. Biomass 47 units. Experience 1. New matter detected, body density LV1. Analysis available at next evolution. Efficient digestion. LV6, LV7. Looking at that data, Lohan became even more excited. The increase in efficient digestion didn't even need to be explained. With a 10 increase in his base digestion speed, he would consume biomass even faster, practically increasing his attack damage by 10 instantly and saving 476 biomass. With this increase, his absorption rose from 315 bio to 346 bio, adding in the bonuses from his other skills. His total absorption rose from 576 bio to 622 bio. Another advantage was the new skill he received, body density, LV127. Bio consumes biomass to increase body density by 10. Curious about the effect of this skill, and with enough biomass stored, Lohan began to repair the exoskeleton and increase his body density. As he imagined, the cost of increasing his own body density was very high, probably because his body was now 60 larger than its original size. Although only a small hole had appeared in his exoskeleton, the entire part that the enemy slime had touched had been greatly corroded to the point of almost disappearing, which caused Lohan to spend 4 biomass just to repair this damage, and to increase his body density by 10 he had to spend another 5 biomass, almost completely draining the biomass. Sure, he was to wasting it on nothing, since only 4 biomass were used to repair the damage, while the 5 biomass used to increase density were investments, not to mention the savings of 476 biomass from evolving efficient digestion. When he bought this skill, he would still have to spend the 5 biomass to become denser anyway, so his profit was enormous. Feeling his own body after increasing his density, Lohan was still a little disappointed to realize that he was still not as dense as his opponent. I think his body density was at least LV3, but with the amount of biomass I have, now I want to be able to buy the upgrades for this skill and still keep my reserve biomass bank for the next battles. But that didn't discourage Lohan. He still felt much stronger than before this battle, and with his spirit renewed, he went in search of other slimes. This time he was having trouble finding the enemy, taking almost 2 hours to search. During that time he accumulated another 1244 biomass by consuming the surrounding plants, and finally completely refined his body upgrades in addition to maintaining a satisfactory safety reserve. Upon reaching 15 biomass stored, Lohan felt that he had reached a limit, unable to store anything else, so he invested again. Noticing how useful each of his skills had been in recent battles, Chapter Lohan upgraded 2 skills that did not require additional investment beyond leveling up. Hemolymphatic tissue, LV2, LV3 393, bio. During combat or under active damage, the conversion of absorbed matter into vital energy is accelerated by 20. Structural stability, LV2, LV3 234. Bio, SAS. Proves control over one's own body. Boom! Spending only 627 bio, Lohan kept a large stock of biomass in case he encountered an opponent along the way and increased his combat efficiency by a large margin. Hemolymphatic tissue did not change much, other than how much it amplified his absorption speed, but with the upgrade of structural stability, Lohan felt a big change in controlling his own body. Instead of only being able to make small fragile tentacles a few centimeters long, or being able to deform enough to become flatter or rounder, Lohan was now able to stretch his tentacles even further, and most impressively, by concentrating, Lohan was able to make small spikes appear on the surface of the exoskeleton. These spikes were less than 0.5 centimeters long, but if he used them in a battle of attrition with another slime, having parts of his resistant exoskeleton penetrate his opponent's fragile skin would be a huge advantage. After all, his exoskeleton was made of biomass, just like the rest of his body, and also possessed digestive capabilities which he used to attack other slimes while taking less damage. Unfortunately, maintaining these deformities was extremely tiring, causing him to have to return to bubble form, to move, reserving this only for combat. But this raised a question in his mind. If at this level I can control myself better this way in the future, will I be able to replicate limbs, such as mouths, teeth, claws, or even wings? This was still a very distant idea, but visualizing the possibility, Lohan got excited, and when he saw another slime a little bigger than him, devouring grass ahead, he decided to be a little more aggressive. Instead of waiting almost an hour for the slime to fall into the trap, he would set this time Lohan didn't slow down at all, and just kept rolling at full speed. Seeing a smaller slime rolling aggressively in its direction, this slime was also fearless and rolled towards Lohan. Having survived for so long, the little creature had already killed several other slimes, and developed a little pride, not admitting that it was inferior to any other slime that did not appear to be several times larger than it. Unfortunately, with a simple and foolish mind, it did not notice the characteristics that showed that a slime was several times more powerful than it, even though it was not larger. It did not see the greater speed with which the enemy was rolling, did not realize that the thorns of the plants did not pierce the skin of that slime, did not realize that the stretching and rounding movement it produced was artificially increasing its speed even more. And when it noticed the small sharp thorns appearing on the opponent's body, it was too late. The two were already very close. A slightly larger fragile gelatinous slime bubble was hit by a small resistant spiky slime bubble, with much of its own body spreading around it, while his opponent showed no signs of slowing down and continued to advance, taking advantage of the greater external small tentacle out of his body and touching the core of the larger slime in a few seconds. Unlike the previous exhausting battle against the slime, with greater body density, this battle was much simpler, brutal, and gelatinous. With his blood boiling with excitement, Lohan wasted no time, and after absorbing this slime, went out in search of other slimes in the region to continue the carnage. Lohan killed 3 more slimes and some smaller insects, until his body finally showed signs of hunger and fatigue. This reminded him of something. I haven't eaten anything today. I've been awake for over 13 hours. How come I am not feeling hungry? Looking at the stat screen before logging off to investigate, this Lohan was satisfied, having killed 4 more slimes and other insects since he last looked at the complete statistics. Even without looking at the increase in numbers, Lohan knew that he had become much stronger since he had been farming biomass for over 3 hours. This was because the new skills and upgrades he received were much greater than the amount he would gain by spending biomass directly, so he had to use some of the stored biomass to replenish the energy required. One of these upgrades came not from a slime but from a beetle that was in the way, and that Lohan rolled over at high speed, only realizing that he had absorbed a more powerful insect after feeling a slight pain from the beetle's powerful bites and hearing the notification sound he received after a few seconds. Reinforced exoskeleton, LV1, LV2. Consumes biomass to generate a resistant exoskeleton around the body. The upgrade to this skill that he received by accidentally absorbing a beetle was largely responsible for most of the biomass consumption that Lohan had achieved in the last few hours. With the level increase of this skill, his exoskeleton could become more resistant, but to reach maximum resistance, it was necessary to consume biomass to reinforce the exoskeleton he already had. Sure, by killing 4 slimes and some other smaller insects. Lohan received some skill upgrades that increased his biomass gain. Mass expansion, LV2. LV3. This was Lohan's second largest consumer of biomass, increasing his size by another 3 centimeters in diameter, but also increasing biomass gain by another 30 based on his base value. Efficient digestion, LV7, LV8. This increase coming from another slime was a big help, increasing his base value by 10, which also increased the gain of mass expansion and passive digestion. Instinctive perception, LV1, LV2. Detects nearby vibrations and movements. Strangely, the last slime did not give Lohan any new skills or skill upgrades, perhaps because the battle process was too simple, or because those slimes were clearly weaker than the first ones he absorbed, or even because the difference in power between him and those slimes was too great. Lohan was still unsure about this, but just absorbing the biomass from that slime was already very profitable for him. Sure, with his gains accelerating so much, Lohan was not stingy and knew what to invest his surplus biomass in skills that he had more difficulty upgrading from other slimes, such as an passive digestion, LV2, LV3. The body develops autonomous microprocesses of energy, conversion absorbing traces of mana and matter from the environment. It slowly generates biomass even at rest. Only 4 biomass. Lohan increased the amount of passive biomass he constantly gained by 10, making even his sleep when he disconnected from Elysium more lucrative. With all these upgrades, his biomass gain had risen in the last few hours from 622 bio to 838 bio. Considering the speed he had when he logged in this morning, of 217 bio per h, Lohan marveled at his current speed. Satisfied with the huge gains he had made that day, with tremendous progress in several areas, Lohan finally logged out. And it was at that moment that he was able to focus on how strange his hunger was. Unlike when he first arrived in this world, where he was very hungry after only a few hours without eating. And his hunger was still at a level that only bothered him slightly. What's happening to me? He thought, confused. Since I woke up yesterday, I've been feeling different, as if my hunger is much more under control. Getting out of bed, Lohan walked to the refrigerator, making this strange feeling even more evident. I know I'm not used to walking like this, but was this feeling supposed to be so easy? He thought even more confused, as his movements seemed more fluid, simpler than the other times he had tried. Maybe it's because I'm still getting used to it. Preparing another meal, Lohan realized that even the earthy taste of the dirty tap water didn't bother him that much. Even though the act of eating was still not pleasant, the feeling of food entering his stomach and nourishing his body was comforting to the point that the weakness he hadn't even realized he was feeling slowly disappeared. Should I eat another meal? He wondered, uncertain. Feeling that the taste wasn't so bad, and that the feeling of energy that food was giving him was very good, Lohan forced himself to drink another mixture of dirty water and the nutritional powder he had. Just like last time, the feeling of satiety was very good to the point that his body seemed even more relaxed. So satisfied, Lohan didn't even worry about anything else and lay down on the bed, falling into the realm of dreams in a few minutes. When he woke up without any tiredness, Lohan felt renewed on a level he hadn't felt in years. The energy in his body was something he couldn't explain where it came from. So, not knowing where to expend this energy, he lowered himself to the floor and started doing some push-ups. He managed to do 10 push-ups without resting. Looking at his thin and malnourished body, Lohan found it unbelievable. Wanting to test these changes further, he started doing sit-ups and squats, managing to do 10 more of each until he reached his body's limit. Slowly, small beads of sweat appeared on his skin, while his muscles began to throb as if they had undergone an intense workout. But despite the fatigue he felt, which would take several minutes to recover from, in just 60 seconds, Lohan felt ready again to do 10 more push-ups, 10 sit-ups and 10 squats. This time, he really felt that his body was exhausted, not risking doing any more exercises. Feeling his hunger recede, Lohan ate another meal and lay down on the floor with his Elysium helmet on his head, enjoying these changes but not wanting to waste too much time thinking about it on the last day of his weekend. Even though the body was the foundation, Lohan knew that if he didn't get money at Elysium by the end of the month, a stronger body wouldn't change anything. Yesterday, Lohan had increased his biomass gain from just over 2 bio to the current 8 bio, and now he wanted to take advantage of the weekend to evolve even further. With such an influx of biomass per hour, Lohan could purchase upgrades that previously seemed like a waste of valuable biomass points, but now could be purchased with just a few minutes of effort. For example, Membrane Reinforcement LV0, LV110, Bio. Strengthens the outer layer, increasing resistance to impacts and cuts. Partial Division, LV0, LV150, Bio. Consumes biomass to create a small extension to collect nearby matter. Membrane Reinforcement seemed like a weaker version of Reinforced Exoskeleton, something that made Lohan curious if it would reinforce the exoskeleton. Partial Division, on the other hand, was the skill Lohan was most curious about. As a player of incremental games, he knew that the ability to multiply and receive income from multiple sources was what made progress in those games so satisfying, and what made the scaling of progress in those games so explosive. To start, he purchased Membrane Reinforcement. Upon spending the 1 bio, Lohan immediately felt the difference between the exoskeleton and the membrane reinforcement. While Reinforced Exoskeleton built a new, harder, and more resistant layer around his body, Membrane Reinforcement reinforced the membrane that already existed in his body, which now lay beneath the exoskeleton. But unlike the exoskeleton, which evolved to become harder and more resistant, like metal, his membrane evolved to become more malleable and resistant, like rubber. Analyzing the two, Lohan regretted not being able to change their order of position, as he knew how much more powerful he would be if he had the malleable and resistant membrane to cushion the impacts to the exoskeleton. But even so, with the sum of the two defenses, Lohan felt even safer. If something managed to break the exoskeleton, it might not be able to pierce the membrane, creating a protective layer where 11 is greater than 2. With 14 biomass remaining, Lohan spent another 264 bio and purchased 2 more upgrades for this skill. Membrane Reinforcement, LV3-172. Strengthens the outer layer, increasing resistance to impacts and cuts. Now looking at the next skill. If Lohan had eyes, they would be shining right now, so without thinking twice, he spent 5 bio and evolved again. Partial Division, LV0, LV150, Bio. Consumes biomass to create a small extension to collect nearby matter. Upon purchasing this evolution, Lohan felt knowledge pouring into his mind, explaining in detail how he should consume his biomass to separate a small, coreless ball of slime that could be controlled. Remotely, absorb biomass from the environmass back to Lohan, restarting the process. Following the instructions the skill gave him, Lohan began to expel his biomass-filled jelly, while staying focused so as not to lose control of it. The feeling was very strange, as if a new hand had appeared in the middle of his back. But for someone who had lived as a slime for the last few days, longer than as a human, Lohan adapted quickly. In a few minutes, a small blue ball was rolling around Lohan, absorbing the grass near him at the same speed as him. The only difference was that the slime ball he generated was still small, so the absorption speed was not that high, because it did not have much contact surface to digest grass constantly. The feeling of controlling the second body was very strange to Lohan. That body was totally devoid of his sensations, as if he were just controlling a remote control car. The process of controlling the second body was not very difficult, but he still needed to pay constant attention to it to maintain maximum efficiency. Surprisingly, he felt that he could still make more divisions if he wanted to. But realizing how mentally exhausting it was to control another body, if he had to control more, his main body would be too exposed. After 2 hours of absorbing biomass, Lohan raised his reservoir back to a safe limit and purchased another upgrade for this skill, wanting to understand it better. Partial division, LV1, LV2, 75. Bio. The second upgrade did not unlock any other abilities, nor did it make the process of generating other clones easier, but the process of controlling the second body became more natural. If before he felt like he was controlling a remote-controlled toy car, now it was as if the remote control had a camera on it, making the process of controlling it easier. After an hour, the clone's body finally reached its maximum size, 20% of Lohan's total size. From that point on, all absorbed biomass would be stored in the clone's body and transferred to Lohan through direct contact. Even while controlling that body, Lohan had no idea how much biomass was there. He only understood how many percent of the clone's body was complete. During that time, the stored biomass was spent on more upgrades for Lohan. Instinctive perception, LV2, LV3 338 bio, body density LV2, LV3 364 bio, structural stability, LV3 LV4 293, bio 1. With these 3 upgrades, not only was 995 bio consumed, but body density also consumed even more biomass to increase his body density. Fortunately, this skill also had an effect on the clone's body, allowing the clone to withstand even more biomass without having to increase its size. But after 2 hours of constant grinding without finding any other creatures to devour, Lohan completely filled his body density, and with the help of his clone, he received another biomass bonus. A total of 335 bio, gained in 2 hours by the clone, or 167 bio, exactly 30% of his total gain. The clone wasn't full yet, so Lohan could leave it farming for a few more hours before receiving the biomass, but he was too eager to know how much he would receive per hour. And the result was very satisfying, as this was an extra value based on the total amount of biomass he received, not just a value based on Lohan's base gain per hour. Excited, Lohan continued to digest everything in his path, with the little slime spinning around, becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. Suddenly, a delicate white fox appeared silently, looking confused at those 2 strange slimes rolling on the grass, where only she knew what she was thinking. When Lohan spawned in Elysium, he was surrounded by dozens, maybe even hundreds of slimes rolling around randomly. Gradually, those slimes absorbed the surrounding plants, and other slimes becoming more powerful, increasing their absorption speed, and causing them to move further and further away from the spawn, to continue absorbing biomass. Since the slimes had no intelligence, they just rolled around randomly, spreading further and further into the forest, which made the task of finding other slimes more difficult with each passing minute. The day before, it took Lohan 1 hour to find each slime, but today it was taking him more than 2 hours to find each slime. However, the quality of the slimes he was finding was getting better and better as the weaker slimes were constantly dying to weaker monsters, or even other slimes. When he found his first slime of the day, the battle was much easier than the day before. Lohan commanded his clone to keep absorbing biomass around him without bothering with the battle, and simply rolled aggressively toward the other slime. His speed was already much greater than that of most of the slimes he encountered, and with the upgrades to his exoskeleton membrane and control over his body, Lohan easily ran over the other slime, absorbing 6 biomass, and receiving an upgrade to one of his skills. Structural stability, LV4, LV5, then improves control over one's own body. With the advancement of this skill, Lohan felt as if the jelly of his body had become even lighter and more fluid to control. Stopping for a second and thinking about extending a hand forward, a tentacle quickly emerged from his body and stretched forward much thinner and with more precise movements than he could make before. Maybe this won't directly improve my combat level much, but it could be useful at some point. Satisfied with that, Lohan had his little clone approach him and continued rolling and exploring the forest. After an hour, Lohan had accumulated enough biomass to purchase another useful upgrade. Mass expansion LV3, LV4. Increases biomass volume and maximum capacity by 30. This was one of the best upgrades Lohan could buy, costing 56 bio and increasing the amount of biomass he absorbed by 30 based on his base absorption. The problem with this upgrade was that not only did it slightly decrease Lohan's speed, but it also required a few dozen more biomass to increase his size and receive this 30 upgrade. But the advantage of this upgrade was that the upper limit of biomass that Lohan could store also increased by 30, rising from 20 to 26. And that was an exponential value. With such a large stockpile, Lohan could now spend almost 3 hours accumulating biomass. and Lohan took advantage of this, storing as much biomass as possible to keep himself safe while exploring the forest. The more time passed, the harder it became to find other slimes, but Lohan didn't give up since he wasn't losing biomass because of it, and he had nothing better to do. From time to time, he would encounter some new insect, but with his current power, small insects no longer posed a threat to him. And with normal insects he needed to absorb several to get a new skill, which was very difficult, so he just continued farming biomass. 2 hours later, Lohan noticed something strange. The trees around him had small marks on their trunks, marks made in approximately the same position on all the trees. Could there be a civilization around here? Lohan thought excitedly. Since he started playing Elysium, he hadn't encountered any other players from what he had seen in the real world. About the game there were several NPCs throughout the game, who exchanged gold for real money. These NPCs were located in human cities, but since Lohan spawned in a forest he had never come across anything like that. Wait! I'm a slime. Will they accept me? He was scared. He had heard several people comment that slimes were the weakest monsters in the game, the easiest monsters for beginners to kill and gain experience to level up easily. If he arrived in a human city, wouldn't the players just kill him? Thinking about this, Lohan became even more frightened. Knowing that he wasn't powerful enough to face a human right now, Lohan gave up on this opportunity and turned around, fleeing from that place. But then his instinctive perception, LV3, noticed a strange movement in the leaves of the bush ahead. Knowing that there was no time to run away, Lohan did the best thing he could do, flattening himself and trying to camouflage himself in the grass, even stopping his digestion, which had not been paused at any time since he started playing. Despite having 360-degree vision, Lohan still needed a direct line of sight to see his target, and since he had crouched down he could only feel the vibration of the ground and hear a slight noise accompanying the vibrations. These vibrations in the ground were rhythmic, with thumps on the ground that closely resembled the footsteps of a bipedal creature. I know that what is coming is bipedal, but I don't know if it's better that the cause of this is a human or a monster like a goblin. In a short time, but what seemed like an eternity to Lohan, the vibrations and the sound of footsteps slowed down but became more intense, indicating that the cause was very close to him. Lohan looked around in fear, hoping not to be noticed, but with mass expansion. LV4, his size had already reached 22 centimeters in diameter, almost the same size as a basketball. Even though he flattened himself down to hide his slightly shiny blue body, still stood out very much among the green grass. When the bipedal being got close enough, Lohan saw what it was. With thin white legs, dressed in a green outfit made of leaves, with straight silky blonde hair, a wooden staff on her back, and a curious expression on her face that further emphasized her blue eyes, a girl of about 15 years old emerged from among the leaves. But the most shocking thing was not even the dizzying speed at which the girl moved, which was much faster than Lohan's top speed, but rather the shape of her ears. With Lohan's knowledge, the girl was clearly not human, but an elf. And just as Lohan stared at the girl in amazement, the girl also stared at Lohan with wide eyes. Shit. Time seemed to stand still. Lohan remained motionless, using structural stability, LV5 to its fullest, to prevent his body from making any movement, hoping against hope that the elf girl hadn't seen him there, or that she would at least ignore the small slime among the leaves on the ground. But, unfortunately for Lohan, the girl's eyes began to shine as she looked at him with curiosity. What do we have here? Why are you so still, little pest? She asked without waiting for an answer, as she slowly removed the staff from her back and walked towards Lohan. Little pest, don't elves like any forest creatures? Lohan wondered, confused. The direction this conversation was taking didn't seem pleasant to him at all. Slowly rolling backwards, Lohan tried to look for anything that could help him escape, but there was nothing. Are you running away from me? The girl asked, shocked. To confirm her guess, the girl did not walk directly towards Lohan, but walked around him, circling the little slime. Lohan was very scared, so he instinctively moved away from the elf girl. Even if she changed direction, he also changed it and tried to get away. You're running away from me, the girl said excitedly, putting the staff behind her back and bending down to look at Lohan even more closely. Why are you running away from me? No creature is afraid of elven magic, but you seem different, little pest. When the girl put away her staff, Lohan felt relieved, but when he heard her call him a little pest again, Lohan was startled and became alert again. Okay, this girl seems to be more curious about me than scared or angry, so as long as I keep her interested, staying alive won't be a problem. Elysium has severe penalties for deaths, with normal human players complaining about losing a portion of their experience, players of rarer classes and races receiving penalties such as losing skills or even receiving permanent debuffs, with the penalty becoming more severe the rarer the player's race or class. There was even a story of a player who completely lost their character with a unique race after dying, having to start from scratch and receiving only a common race after that. Coincidentally, Lohan had a unique race and class which scared him with the possibility of dying. Not knowing how to interact with the elf girl, Lohan quickly thought of something. With structural stability at level 5, Lohan's control over his own body was far superior, and with the human mind controlling that small body, he was able to do much more advanced things than other slimes, such as pointing at the staff on the elf girl's back with a jelly tentacle. When Lohan's body began to vibrate with a small tentacle extending toward her, the girl was a little startled, but she didn't move without any fear of the damage a slime could cause her. Curiously, she saw the creature, which should have had no intelligence, point at her staff, as if it wanted to say something with it. You mean the reason you're afraid of me is because I picked up my staff?" the girl asked incredulously. Previously, she had spoken to the slime only because she was used to talking to all the creatures and plants in the forest, not imagining that the slime would actually respond. To her shock, the slime's tentacle began to tremble as it readjusted itself as if under a lot of stress, but slowly the shape of a small hand, like a baby's, appeared, with 4 fingers closed and only the thumb raised. "Is that a yes? You understood me and are responding to me?" The slime did not undo its hand and just waved it forward. "Oh my myriath, did I really find an intelligent slime? This can only be a miracle," the girl said in shock, quickly approaching Lohan. "Little pest, are the other slimes as intelligent as you?" Lohan didn't like that she kept calling him a little pest, but looking at the path he had come from with the ground cleared of any kind of life, and a clean trail of death and destruction of vegetation. So he controlled his tentacle to close his thumb, opened his index finger, and shake his hand from side to side in denial. Looking at that hand, the girl was even more shocked. This little slime really understood her question, and managed to answer negatively as well. Excited, she looked to the side, and pointed in a certain direction, where a small blue body was crouched down, just like the slime in front of her, but behind that blue body, another trail of destruction had been left. "If you're the only smart one, why is your little friend also hiding like you?" she asked curiously, pointing to the smaller slime. Using his clone's vision and seeing that the girl was looking directly at him, Lohan controlled the clone to roll up to him and merge with his body. Seeing the smaller slime approach the larger slime and merge with it, the girl was even more shocked. "You have the rare ability to clone yourself. Wow, how lucky is that? I think you're the only slime I've seen in the last 100 years that has developed this ability." This surprised Lohan. No other slime has come up with this skill in the last 100 years. Although that's not so surprising considering the cost of 5 bio to unlock this evolution. It's possible that the other slimes don't have enough discernment to choose this evolution over the cheaper ones. By showing her some tricks such as his human hand and the integration of his clone, Lohan realized that the girl was no longer showing any hostility towards him, which made him feel much more relieved. But the girl's next action completely startled Lohan. Without asking him anything, the girl suddenly reached out her hands and picked Lohan up. "Shit, what does this crazy girl want to do to me? Am I going to become an experiment on some wizard's table?" Although he was afraid and didn't know what this girl would do to him, Lohan knew that he was still too weak to resist, and a battle now had a high chance of resulting in his death, so he didn't even use his digestion on the girl. Leaving her leaf clothes completely intact, the girl held him in her arms and was surprised that she wasn't being corroded, even though she wasn't afraid of a slime's corrosion. From all her experiences with slimes, even the largest slimes posed no danger to her. So what could a slime as small as this do? What neither she nor Lohan knew was that with efficient digestion LV8, Lohan already had the ability to corrode her clothes, albeit a little slowly, and if he used it on her skin, the girl might even feel pain. But Lohan didn't want to risk an attack, and the girl didn't imagine that this little slime had such advanced skills, even though it was so small. So, nothing happened. "Your body is different, you're still very soft, but it seems that your skin is different from the other slimes I've held," she asked in a low voice, as if talking to herself. Lohan didn't want to reveal any secrets, but to keep the girl interested, he used structural stability LV5 and reinforced exoskeleton LV2 to make his skin harder and softer in sequence. "You can control that." "Wow, you're the most unique slime I've ever seen," the girl said, jumping up and down with excitement as she watched Lohan's demonstration. "Should I take you to my master to see? But she hates slimes. I'm afraid that if I take you to her, she'll destroy you before I can explain your situation. What should I do?" Hearing that, Lohan was so scared that his body even began to tremble slightly in the elven girl's lap. Seeing the little slime trembling at her words, the girl remembered that he could understand what she was saying and felt guilty. "I'm sorry, don't worry. I won't take you to my master. Okay, as an apology, you can have this mana stone." Saying that, she put Lohan on the ground and handed him a small blue gem the size of a fingernail. Lohan looked at it curiously, having never seen a mana stone like that before, and confused as to how useful it could be, considering how small the gem was. "This looks a bit like the core of a slime, but its density is much higher." Looking at the little slime who just stared at her, and the mana stone without doing anything, the girl explained, "Don't be afraid. This is a mana stone. As far as I know, slimes love mana stones and can undergo great evolutions after absorbing one." Curious, Lohan extended his hand and took the mana stone. Or rather, he extended his tentacle and the stone entered his skin, starting digestion. Lohan was shocked by what he saw. Organic matter detected. Mana stone. Low purity. Biomass 98 units. Do you want to absorb it? Looking at the window that appeared, Lohan was shocked. 98 units of biomass in just this tiny little mana stone. Yes. Of course I want to absorb it. Starting the absorption. Lohan's jelly began to bubble, and the mana stone inside his body slowly began to be digested. The amount of biomass in that gem was so great that Lohan had to focus completely on digesting it, ignoring the grass beneath him and focusing his digestion solely on the mana stone. Seeing the little slime digesting it, the elf girl smiled excitedly. Very well. I don't know how much this can help you, but even the big slimes go crazy for mana stones when they see them. If you like it, I can bring you more tomorrow, little girl. Hearing that, if Lohan had eyes, they would be shining right now. Yes. Yes. Of course. Why wouldn't I want that, even if I can't absorb it all right now? I can store several mana stones in my body and digest them little by little. Tal. Excited by the proposal. Lohan gave a thumbs up with his hand and continued digesting. Smiling, the girl reached out and stroked Lohan's round head. Tend. Very well. Then hide well and develop yourself better. A little while. My master will come looking for me. And, if she sees you, something bad might happen. So try to find me here, again tomorrow. Hearing that her master could come at any moment, Lohan waved goodbye to the girl and rolled away at full speed, not corroding anything on the ground to leave no trace of where he went, as he focused on digesting the mana stone itself. Even though she's small, this little girl is really fast. Wait, is this slime a boy or a girl? I guess she could be either. Right! If I'm not mistaken, slimes don't have a gender, so she shouldn't mind me treating her like a little girl. Tal, the girl thought contentedly, remembering how cute that little slime had been. Lohan, who was a few dozen meters away, after a few minutes of rolling at full speed, had no idea that he had become a little girl in the eyes of that teenage elf, being at a safe distance. Lohan summoned his clone again and let the clone continue to consume the grass around him, while he focused entirely on consuming the mana stone. With so much biomass in this mana stone, I should be able to improve my efficiency several times over, even if the cost of upgrading this skill is high. Tal. Efficient digestion, LV8, was Lohan's favorite investment, but the current upgrade cost was already at 743 biomass. And with each level this skill rose, the cost increased by 25. Even though he always wanted to buy upgrades for this skill, he was always very economical, focusing on other skills to upgrade before this one. But now, with a mana stone like this, decided to spoil himself a little and improve this skill a few times. Since he didn't need to focus on completely digesting the grass while walking, Lohan could explore the forest he was in much more while rolling at almost full speed. While exploring, Lohan finally found other low-level creatures that he could face in the future, the monsters that are usually present at the beginning of the multiplayer adventure in various games, goblins. Looking at their structure, Lohan realized that the battle would now possibly be quite dangerous, especially without knowing how resistant these goblins were to his corrosion, so he decided to wait for his mana stone to be completely digested, and with the 98 biomass from that, plus the biomass he received from his other skills, he would have so many upgrades that he would be safer to face these goblins. Great, now I just need to be patient and enjoy my gains. Even with the mana stone, Lohan did not stop absorbing the grass. He would clear an area, stop, change position, and start the process again at a new spot. This back and forth lasted all day with him, and the clone working tirelessly focused on accumulating every gram of biomass they could find. The mana stone ended up being used up faster than he expected. As Lohan used the biomass he earned to buy various upgrades during the day, his body began to demand more energy, accelerating the consumption of the stone. When he finally stopped, the stone was already reduced to less than half. The effort, however, took a heavy toll on his mind. Spending so many hours coordinating two bodies completely exhausted Lohan. At 10 p.m. he could no longer process anything. He simply disconnected from Elysium and went straight to bed, falling asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. The next day, a Monday, Lohan woke up refreshed. Although yesterday had been an exhausting day, Lohan was very pleased with the progress he had made. Surprisingly, despite only eating yesterday morning, Lohan was still not hungry at all, even slightly full, and with a lot of energy in his body. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, Lohan saw his new body, which looked more natural every day. A 19-year-old very thin with dry patches on his skin, where he had scratched himself during the night, straight black hair, slightly longer than a buzz cut, the result of having to clean himself with low-quality products and dirty water. But despite the body showing signs of hardship, his blue eyes sparkled with excitement and unwavering determination. Unlike the dead detached eyes that this body had in his memories, Lohan now saw a path for himself and a promising future that he could follow, making his eyes shine. Thinking about the exercises he had done the day before, Lohan prepared another glass of dirty water with nutritional powder and felt the energy filling his body again. The taste of this is terrible, but if this is what I need to consume to nourish my body and become healthy again, I'll do it without thinking twice, he thought. Even with that taste, the feeling of energy it was bringing him was addictive. Not wasting this excitement, Lohan crouched down on the apartment floor and did the same exercises as the day before. Without proper equipment and knowledge of exercises, Lohan was lost on what to do, so he just copied the bare-bones training routine he saw in an anime in his previous world. His technique was completely wrong in several exercises, with his body unconsciously doing the exercises in easier ways, which reduced the gains, but even so Lohan felt a slight sensation, as if his muscles were swollen and satisfied after each exercise. Excited and a little tired, Lohan even allowed himself the luxury of taking a real shower with dirty water and cheap hygiene products provided by the government. But still, it was the cleanest he had felt since coming to this world. The walk to the bus stop was much quieter than he had imagined, apart from a few people who looked at him for a second longer than normal, confused by something. Strangely, his body was more agile than the last time he had made this journey 3 days ago with him, dodging people more easily, and even spending less time getting from his house to the bus stop, arriving at his destination with steady breathing and little sweat running down his body. Am I becoming more proficient in using a healthy body, or is there something more to it? He wondered, as he held onto a support bar above his head on the bus and stood upright, finding no vacant seat today. If it were just about control over my body, my lack of hunger, or more efficient energy, digestion in nutritional powder wouldn't make sense, right? Wait, more efficient energy digestion, isn't that because I evolved efficient digestion, LV8, LV10, right? Once that theory entered his mind, it wouldn't leave. That's the only explanation I can think of, but making my digestion more efficient shouldn't make me feel less hungry before I eat something else, right? What's going on? Lohan leaned his body to the side as the bus swerved, to avoid a flying motorcycle above the flight limit, maintaining his balance with an ease that would have caused him to fall face first onto the ground 3 days ago. He unlocked the cracked screen of his cell phone and typed in keywords that could bring up what he wanted, but also wouldn't make it clear to the algorithm what he wanted to know, ignoring the synthetic food ads that popped up on the side. Lyceum players changes. The results took a while to load on the bus' slow, free network, but what appeared confirmed that he wasn't the only one paranoid about it. As he imagined, the first news items seemed irrelevant, just talking about players who were changing irrelevant things. But as he continued scrolling down the screen, a post on a forum caught his attention. Recently, my back pain has decreased, getting better every day to the point that today, I woke up feeling better than ever. The only thing I did this week was play Elysium. Has anyone else noticed anything like this? ch.13-22. Be careful, they say that before you die, your body stops bothering you. Metalord 666, ignore the comment above. It must be some bored troll. As for the topic, I haven't felt any change in my spine, maybe because I never have problems with pain there, but recently I noticed that my reflexes were a little sharper, but the change wasn't very noticeable in Elysium. I'm an archer. Could that affect anything? Shield 77. I play as a squire to an NPC knight. He trains me constantly in the game, which seemed boring to me at first, but since I started this training, I felt that my pain in the real world slowly began to disappear. You're big mem, so you noticed it too. I thought I was the only one who noticed this since my first day in Elysium. I felt that my mind was much clearer, even after disconnecting from the game. Wrench, Metalord, 666. What's your class in the game at Yobing? Drigabi M. I'm a white monk at Metalord, 666. Rex TP de Capitine. White monk squire. You guys have unusual classes, I'm jealous, but as a monk, you probably don't get much gold. Right at Yobig Mai. Yobig Mimhihe. Although monks normally can't accept money as long as you don't get caught, no rule is absolute at State Te Capitan. From that point on, the conversation shifted to the players, discussing how to earn gold, no longer commenting on the changes in their bodies. Now I'm so jealous, I wish I could discuss the best methods of earning gold with others too. Lohan sighed as he stood up straight and tried to notice anything different about his spine. Since he had only controlled this body for a few hours, before playing Elysium, he hadn't noticed anything different, but searching through the memories of this body, Lohan realized that he should also have slight pain in his spine, to the point that he only felt comfortable when leaning slightly forward. But now he stood perfectly upright with a straight spine and no sign of pain. Looking around, Lohan noticed that everyone around him was standing slightly bent over. Is that why everyone has been looking at me strangely since I left home? Renmi, and in order not to stand out, Lohan bent his spine slightly. Returning to the search page, Lohan saw a few more posts mentioning changes, but these posts didn't generate much traffic, attracting few responses. It's only been 7 days since the game was released. Maybe people haven't noticed the changes yet. Feeling that this made sense, Lohan felt fresh, pure air, embracing his body as if the act of existing had become easier and more pleasant, without the dirt and pollution in the air. Knowing that this was his destination, Lohan quickly got off the bus and faced the college again. Unlike his first time here, Lohan felt much better, now breathing in the fresh air of the college with a smile on his face, before lowering his head, bending his spine slightly. He was still aware of the dangers that wealthier, more influential and powerful students posed to him, so he didn't let these changes go to his head and acted as usual. "Bro, you won't believe the loot I got from killing an elite goblin," a boy said excitedly to his friend. "You killed an elite goblin?" "Crap, the group I formed died yesterday to a group of 7 common goblins. I lost an entire level of experience, setting me back to level 4. His friend said enviously. Hearing this, the first boy was surprised and put his hand on his friend's shoulder. "Don't worry, when your daddy here gets stronger, he'll pick you up at your Nobi village and take you to hunt more powerful monsters. Get lost." The friend pushed the boy away and left laughing. Across the hall, a group of girls were also talking about Elysium. "Are LV5 spells really more than 20 words long?" One girl asked another girl in the group in shock as she applied lipstick and looked at herself in the mirror. "Yeah, when I found out I wanted to change classes right away, but my instructor hit me over the head and I had to accept another hour-long study session," her friend replied, rolling her eyes. "That's too bad." Another girl laughed at her friend's misfortune. "Don't even tell me if I had known that a wizard needs to memorize 20 words just to cast a slightly more powerful fireball spell. I would have switched to another class without thinking twice. Is tid enough to memorize the content of anatomy," the girl complained. "If it weren't for my father insisting so much, I would have thrown that stupid helmet away already. Hey, I'm actually having fun in the game." Hearing that conversation, Lohan was surprised by the complexity of the game. Did even a player have to memorize long chant phrases to cast spells? The game was more realistic than he had imagined. With nothing interesting to do until class started, Lohan walked through the college hallways, listening to interesting conversations about Elysium and the experiences of other students. From what he understood when connecting to the game for the first time, not only was each player's race and class random, but the player spawn location was also random. With millions of people playing Elysium on this planet, alone putting everyone in a single starting village would completely overload the game. To deal with this, players were distributed among any of the thousands of starting villages scattered around the world. No one is commenting on spawning in a forest like me. Is this something exclusive to monster races? The more he listened, the more useful information he learned. Apparently other players also knew about slimes, but monsters like these were so weak that only level 1 players bothered with them. The only useful thing slimes had were their cores, which were worth several times less than the mana stones of weak monsters like goblins. So it was a relief to know that if he encountered other players, the danger he would face might not be so high since he had nothing of value to them. Sure, if he encountered someone cruel or just wanted some ext, he would be screwed. To understand how screwed he would be, he paid attention to the discussions about their power levels. Players from level 1 to level 4 were basically normal people with the average physical strength of an ordinary adult, and their skills still being very common. Only from level 5 onwards did players unlock more powerful skills and receive enough stat points to rise above the average normal human and unlock more superhuman skills, such as mages, fireballs that had the force of small bombs, accurate shots from archers that rivaled professionals in accuracy, power and cadence, and other things at that level. Although there were some people with classes and races above the ordinary, apparently no one noticed any physical changes like Lohan. Seeing that class was about to start, and already satisfied with the information he had gathered so far, Lohan quickly moved to the classroom and sat down with his head bowed in his usual place. Just as the students in the hallway were talking about Elysium, this was also the topic of conversation among the students from the upper zone in the class. "Really, could you get me a spot in your father's guild?" The girl who had gossiped about Isabella Vance the day before asked a boy with glasses as she spoke sweetly and grabbed the boy's arm. The boy smiled lewdly as he rubbed his arm between the girl's breasts and replied proudly, "No problem, even if your class and race are common, I can still get you treated like a player with an uncommon class. How about it?" Hearing that, the girl's eyes sparkled and she winked suggestively at him. "Yes, I think I'll have to thank you properly later, Malcolm." Malcolm smiled even more upon hearing that, but controlled himself to maintain his composure and turned to the other students in the upper zone. "You are also invited if you wish. Just know that my father's guild has even rejected a player with a mythical race." Upon hearing that, the room fell completely silent, with everyone quieting down upon hearing the words. You are joking, right, Malcolm? Is to mythic race the highest level in the game, with the total number of players with a mythic race or class being less than 1 in 10 million? One boy was so shocked that he stood up awkwardly from his chair and asked again to confirm. He had heard perfectly well, the entire upper zone group had heard perfectly well what Malcolm had said. Even the lower zone students sitting further away had heard perfectly well, but no one believed they had heard correctly. So when the boy asked again, even the boldest lower zone students looked at Malcolm surreptitiously to make sure they weren't hearing things. No one knew how big the difference was between a common race and a mythical race, but knowing how rare it was and already knowing how big the difference was between a common race and a rare race, one could imagine the power of a mythical race. Satisfied with the attention everyone was giving him, Malcolm smiled even more, not caring that the poor people from the lower zone. To make it easier for them, he even raised his voice, showing off to the fullest. Ha! Actually, we're not even sure if it was really a mythical. In the end, it became a joke in my father's guild. He continued talking completely, ignoring the sound of the room door opening behind him. My sister was visiting my father and heard the call through the secretary. The poor secretary was as shocked as you were at first, but after hearing the idiot's explanation, she was just disappointed. Following my sister's suggestion, she hung up on him. The girl, still clinging to Malcolm's arm, rubbed her breasts against his arm again and asked in a flirtatious voice, why did she hang up on a mythic race player? Because the idiot said his race was slime. Malcolm burst into uncontrollable laughter, finding the situation hilarious. The room was still in shock, but the mood changed abruptly. In the midst of his laughter, an extremely cold female voice cut through the noise. You said that a player claimed to be a slime, and that his race was mythical. The air in the room seemed to freeze at that moment. Malcolm stopped laughing, and felt a chill run down his spine. He turned slowly, forcing the girl to let go of his arm, and came face to face with the owner of the voice. Isabella. Isabella, Malcolm asked, shocked. Don't call me Isabella, we're not that close. Just answer me. You were saying that a mythic race player called your guild, and that his race was that of a slime, Isabella asked indifferently. Malcolm remembered the rumor that Isabella was a player with an epic race, but that her race wasn't that good. Saying that he refused a player with a mythic race wasn't the same as saying that he would also reject Isabella Vance. At that point, Malcolm's mind began to work at high speed, desperately searching for a solution to this situation. But unable to think of any excuse, he just admitted it honestly. Yes, Lady Vance, but I think he was lying. No one thinks that a useless race like a slime could be a mythical race. If that were the case, I would have killed hundreds of mythical races already. Ha, he said, forcing a laugh. Isabella just stared at him for a few more seconds, analyzing whether he was really telling the truth, until she nodded and went to sit down, ignoring Malcolm completely. Seeing how she acted, Malcolm clenched his hand tightly, his nails slightly piercing his skin, but feeling the pain he quickly loosened his grip and forced a smile as he turned to his friends, talking distractedly about other things. But after a few seconds, Lohan heard the girl clinging to Malcolm say in a low voice, Who does she think she is, acting all arrogant like that? Die-STHH. Shut up, woman. Malcolm quickly silenced the girl, and pretended he hadn't heard anything, but his hand under the table began to caress the girl's leg. Lohan raised his eyebrow in surprise when he heard that. Although the girl's voice was very low, Lohan's senses were much sharper today, allowing him to see much more clearly and hear everything around him in much greater detail. Unconsciously, he looked at Isabella Vance, who had her back to Malcolm and the girl, and noticed her rolling her eyes. Wait, did she roll her eyes because she also heard what the girl said? Lohan wondered in surprise. But he didn't dwell on it, even though the subject of the conversation was him, or rather the former Lohan who owned this body. The conversations and interactions between students from the upper zone were of no concern to someone from the lower zone like him, so he just looked ahead again, and waited for class to start enjoying the feeling of breathing clean air like this. Nothing very important happened during the day with Lohan, just focusing on learning the content of the classes, which he did with relative ease, and then returning home as quickly as possible. As time passed in college with nothing to do, Lohan took the opportunity to observe the changes that had occurred in him. What was shocking was that he realized that these changes were slightly related to the skills he had as a slime. The improvement in absorbing nutrients from nutritional powder could be explained by efficient digestion, LV10. The increase in agility, flexibility and better posture could be attributed to viscous flow, LV8. Even the prolonged satiety after each meal, or the feeling of less hunger at college than at home, could be explained by passive digestion, LV4, which allowed him to passively absorb nutrients around him. Since the air at college in the upper zone was cleaner and purer, the nutritional value he could absorb per hour was much higher than what he absorbed at home in the lower zone. Every abnormality he noticed during the day could be explained by a different evolution he had obtained as a slime. He just couldn't understand why he was the only one who was noticing these changes so clearly. But when he got home, Lohan stopped thinking about it and ran to Elysium. He even thought about taking another nutritional powder to exercise again, but not only was he not hungry, he needed to save it until the end of the month. Otherwise he would have nothing to eat and no money to buy anything else. It would be tragic to waste his potential, because he starved to death out of greed for more nutritional powder. Soon as the little slime appeared in the forest, its surroundings also became clear to Lohan's mind, who enjoyed the feeling of air, even fresher than that of the college, as he looked at his status screen. In total, Lohan had purchased 14 evolutions yesterday, and considering that the price increased with each evolution, the total amount of biomass he consumed was absurd. With all these advantages, his biomass absorption speed rose from 95 bio to 132 bio, adding up with his clone Lohan, was devouring 1584 bio. Although he hadn't even doubled his biomass production in a day, with so many upgrades, Lohan's combat power had grown tremendously. So he smiled, or rather, imagined himself smiling. With the mana stone inside him almost gone, he was curious about what would happen when it was completely digested.